I made a song without using any plugins, which was fun. Thought it'd be a good challenge for me as a producer. I started making music on a Tascam 4 track, still got it, but I was interested to see whether the challenge of producing a track, drums, bass, guitars, synths, no vocals this one, but just using source sounds, volume, and pan. So if I wanted to use like a reverb, delay, anything like an effect, obviously no plugins, so I've used a Yamaha Rex 50, which I'm going to show. I'll probably take a picture and put it here somewhere maybe, but basically it's a multi-effects unit from 1980s. The sounds I use in the track come from OP1, my Minilogue synth, which is just here. Drums were from this Volca sample. I made loops on here. So yeah, this is the session. First off, here's a blast of the track, which is basically how I'm going to put it out. I'm going to share this online. This is how it's going to sound. Kind of builds up. It's the main intro beat. Got some pad keys. Some other kind of weird sounds. Then guitar. You get the gist. It's an instrumental and it's a beat, but it's got different things coming in. Now that version you're hearing, that's actually been run through my secret weapon limiter. Can you see that? Alesis micro limiter. Cheap, cheerful, but really cool. I think they're from the 90s. Sounds fantastic. I've sent out the audio from the drum bus and the keyboards group, and then I've blended it. So this is parallel. So what you're hearing in this version here is very, very, very heavily compressed and limited signal blended in with the actual normal audio. Probably a bit over the top, but I actually ended up liking how it sounded. I was recording it in and I was thinking, probably gone a bit heavy on this here, but at the same time I was like, yep, I'm liking it. I didn't put the bass through it. Like the bass is on its own group. For the purposes of this session, so I can show the individual sounds, and sorry, this video where I'm going to explain the session, I'm going to have just dry, not compressed signal, so it won't sound quite as impressive and punchy and everything. So let's go. So first off, I made a drum beat. I had to make all the different sounds work, so I went for a sparse drum beat. Just kick, real basic thing. And that's it. That's some basic 808 type stuff. And then a second layer, which I use various different sounds from this, a bit more width. I had some panning going on. So those two beats together. Next drum layer. I dragged an audio file. I have used some samples in just directly from my sample folder, dragged into the session, maybe finding little loops that work and just letting them loop. No EQ, no compression, no processing, literally no plugins at all. This is a kind of like, kind of a weird lo-fi sound, but I love the texture it added in the track. It's just there, like, it's like a shaker. I didn't really find a good shaker sample, and I found that I added these 808 sort of snappy style like hi-hats later, and so I didn't really want a shaker or anything, or like a regular hi-hat. So these hi-hats that come in, again, I programmed these on the Volca. It's in there. Finally, well, not finally, I had this dirt drums. I sent the drums out to my Rex 50, the Yamaha, with a mono distortion. And that's in the mix. So let me just show you that. That sound actually, ooh, this sound is from a sample from my phone. I recorded a bit of jazz in a live gig, and this is a tiny, tiny little chunk. If you look at that, it's just that little bit of audio. It's just on the beat, and it gives just like a little bit of emphasis. It's all about syncopation. In the second drum beat, you hear that reverb on the snare? That's the reverb on the Volca, which I just brought in on that section. And when you put that through the dirt, it really could get this like sound. So that's a setting on the Yamaha Rex 50 that's like distortion into reverb. It's sort of a combination of those two effects. So distortion's in mono, and then the reverb's in stereo. So when that's in the mix, like quite quietly, just adds this atmosphere. Through the whole track, I just like went on my sample library. I think it might even be an Ableton sample. I found this vinyl crackle. And I found off my own sample library, a thunderstorm. I recorded this outside my house. And it's like a random loop of this rain sound that I recorded outside my house. I quite like there just being a sense of something gluing the sounds together, a little bit of like texture, as they say. You can hear it in the intro, but once the track's going, it sort of becomes oblique, and it's sort of like, it's there, but you don't really notice it. Yeah, cool. So that's all the drums. I'm happy with those, and not too many elements, but every element's got its own space. Because of the nature of working without plugins, I didn't really have the side chaining capability, so I wanted a bass line that didn't land on the first beat of the bar, like the kick drum. So the bass I went for, recorded on the OP1, was it's offbeat. That consists of 2 layers. One is clean, like this. It's a bit of a weird bass sound. I didn't spend that long on it. I just sort of found something that I thought worked in the moment. That's part of working without plugins. You don't. Well, I found that like it reminded me of working on my old tape machine. You find a sound, record it in, go, yeah, that works, then you move on. You don't like labour over the sound. And if I was using a VST plugin, I might have really like tweaked the sound a lot. But it's not landing on the beat at all. So it works with this drum beat. It fills the gaps. So that gives the kick and the bass equal measure, equal size in the track. And I put this dirty version of the bass in there as well. That's to help it cut through the mix, just a bit more of an edge on the bass. So those two sounds together. So that's the bass, just 2 layers, one dirty. The dirty layer is going through the Rex 50 again. Onto the keys. This is the fun stuff. Similar kind of mentality was I wanted syncopation, each sound to fill its own little rhythmic space, and in terms of like the register of the sound and everything. So the intro was just played once on, it's like a LFO pad on the Minilogue. So the LFO is set to do the cutoff, and a chord that's got some nice tension in there. So it builds up, and by the time I'm opening the filter, that was quite a nice intro. We're in. So, Minilogue, and then I did some stuff here. OP1. That's just a straight OP1 sound. This is like 2 basic chords, quite nice chords, and then I sent that out to the Rex 50, which has got a preset called Symphonic. It's like a chorus, stereo chorusy type thing. You can hear it like warbling a bit. Put that together with a dry sound. Kind of a little bit like the old sort of orbital electronic kind of sound. That's throughout the track, just doing these nice soft chords. Right, so the drone that's going through the track. 2 different layers of OP1 synth doing just another very subtle tension thing. One is this. Those 2 notes, and the other one is this. And there's a dissonance in there. What that is basically filling subtle sonic space in the track, and then when it disappears, you notice this, there's some space now, and that's how the track kind of moves on. So as you get to this next section, still hear the drone, and then it's gone. With the riff and the guitar, the sort of the next section, basically there's no droning sounds at all. It's just choppy and funky. Guitar-wise, this was fun. I actually recorded the guitar in through the Alesis micro limiter. A couple of pedals, a little spring reverb into a kind of Hudson broadcast clone, being very, very squashed. So the reverb is brought out. The reverb tails are really emphasized. It's a call and answer type syncopation between this synth part that's going bap, 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 and that is the riff. I've called it a riff. That is OP1. Then I sent that out to the Rex 50 using an echo, and the echo signal is this. It's like a stereo slapback delay. These two sounds together. There you go. And then that's like the guitar call and answer. So very compressed flanged guitar, which I forgot to mention. I'm using a flanger effect from the Rex 50. And you can just hear that. Finally, high keys, where in the mix we've got the sound that's been sent out to a flange keyboard in the Rex 50s. The original sound was this. Just a little plink, plonk. And then, bang, bang. So basically all these different sounds are like not concurrent, they're just jumping in the spaces. And so without the use of compression, side chaining, any like EQ to help things fit together, which I always use to make sounds work together, it had to just be like, okay, well, where's the space and what type of sound fits in that space? So we've got some warm sounds, some bright twinkly sounds, some stabby sounds, some sounds that are left and right, some sounds that are in the middle, all doing different syncopations. And therefore there isn't really anything competing with each other. Everything's got its space. The solo was OP1, which is this sound. The delay is internal, and then I sent that to the plate, some kind of plate or hall reverb in the Rex 50. Recorded that in directly. So while I'm there, I'm just going to quickly jump back to the actual final like master, if you want to call it that. Like, you know, the Alesis squashed version. It's crazy how much that is compressed. If you look at the waveform on the screen, it's not a sausage. It isn't like this like block sound. So we know that there is still transient information there. It's just the way it's been compressed. This is why this limiter is so good. It doesn't just go and squash everything. It's still moving, and I've got the release set really fast. So as it's squashing, it's releasing really fast. So, and I think if I was to do this again, I might do it again. I might balance it a little bit better, but I still feel it's exciting and it's interesting, and it has a feeling like it's already a record kind of thing. You know, analog hardware, old school, still sounds great. And at the outro, you know, you can really hear as the sounds kind of disappear. It's really pushing. Because everything's happening in its own little time slot, syncopated, this limiter is allowed to breathe. So you get sounds going really big, and then the next sound's really big, and the kick and snare is still there. If there was lots of like sounds all on top of each other, the limiter would have just gone and kind of just limited everything together, and probably would have lost a lot of its vibe, you know. That offbeat sound, that's not even that loud in the track. And it's a little weird sample sound. That main like bar sound is called stab. It's actually in the original track without the compressor. It isn't even really that epic a sound. It's just this. Just, I think it's from the Volca. Listen, the final compressed version. Listen to how dramatic it is. It's great. Guitars are really like up there as well. You can really hear the texture now because all of that's been boosted up. So yeah, I mean, I've just done a little bit of a talk through this because I haven't used plugins. It allows you to move faster and actually just commit to sounds. Who knows whether it's going to be better than the plugins or not? It might not be. Plugins might give you more control, might have the same sound, but it's that sort of sense of like, it's not perfect, but I like how it sounds. Okay, so there was an extra stage to finish this track off that I did after recording the last bit of video. So when I listened back to the mix that I'd put through the Alesis microlimiter, this thing, because of the way I'd done the signal routing and the way I'm not using any plugins, it meant that I couldn't do a low cut before going to the limiter. Sometimes if you send the entire signal to a limiter or to a compressor, it's going to really like make the low end bloom out and it's kind of like squash it, but with a limiter it then pushes it, enhances it again. So basically this first attempt at kind of bouncing out and mastering using this limiter sounded really fat, but then I realized that it was way too much bass and the high end, I didn't have any EQ on the master bus, again no plugins. So I actually decided to send out that same mix through my Behringer mixer, which I've got basically just as a line mixer in my studio to help route my synths and everything through to my interface. That's got 3-band EQ. So I sent the sound out from the computer through my Behringer mixer, boosted the high end, tweaked the low end a little bit to balance it out, and then you'll hear this final result here. It still sounds fat. The guitars has been really brought up quite a lot. And if I just compare that to the previous version, it just sounds a bit duller, a bit more muddy, which is just the nature of not having any plugins. So it's a little bit of a hack for the final stage. I think it's worked wonders, and then we do have a final mix. So yeah, there we go. That's the no plugs. I've called it no plugs, and it's finished. I feel like it needs a rap or a vocal on there. Just saying. Okay, bye. Let me know what you think, and if you want to try and make a track yourself using no plugins, I recommend it.